Show.
It is indeed a great privilege for me to be speaking to the Rotary Institute at their large event, the Odyssey. I would like to start by saying that the COVID-19 pandemic poses an existential threat to humanity. And this has forced us to pause and reflect at our lives, our economic priorities, the meaning of progress, and of course, the importance of sustainability. While many of us can't wait to return to the pre COVID normal, the pandemic has exposed to mankind that we have been on a path of unsustainable consumption or growth. Of course, very, very unsustainable economic growth. We have seen what ecological degradation can do for us. And of course, above all, it has exposed the ugly truths of inequality across the world. Equity, diversity, and inclusion are central components of creating a more just and sustainable world. And that's what COVID-19 has shown to us all. A truly sustainable future will involve meaningful participation of all members of a community. And in an increasingly interconnected world, the coronavirus crisis has taught us that what affects one person anywhere affects everyone everywhere. These are dangerously precarious times. We inhabit a critical moment in the history of humanity. If we make the right decisions, the future of our species will be bright and promising. But if we make the wrong ones, humanity will either destroy itself or at the very least leave the question of civilization survival in the balance. Historians of evolution have traced the extinction of species in many cases to virulent diseases, of course in other cases to toxic environmental pollution, and of course to natural disasters like volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, and man-made disasters like dam bursts, oil spills, and the like. And it is in this context that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, assume critical importance. Now, before COVID-19 hit us, SDGs seemed like a bunch of well-meaning motherhood statements. But in the times of COVID, we realize how important SDGs are with their universal scope, interlinked nature, and focus on leaving no one behind. And this provides us with an essential roadmap to equitable, diverse, and inclusive future. They address burning issues that can make or break humanity: hunger, poverty, healthcare, economic equity, clean air, water, diversity or biodiversity, education, world peace, scientific innovation. If humanity is to survive, we need to look at and relook at what is right and good. We can no longer undervalue the future and spare little thought about how our actions may affect the generations that come after us. Now let's start with poverty. COVID-19 has made visible the plight of millions of migrant workers in India as well as globally. Migrant workers who work day and night with no job security, no social safety net, limited access to healthcare and basic services, and in abysmal living conditions are among those who have borne the brunt of this crisis. The migrant labor exodus we witnessed this year has brought the focus back on the importance of a minimum basic income for the poorest of poor. We will need to turn back the poverty clock. The World Bank, in fact, has predicted that COVID-19 will force 50 million people into extreme poverty. Therefore, poverty alleviation programs will become an imperative the world over. Next comes hunger. Every year, nearly 1 billion people suffer from some form of hunger brought about by war or climate change or simply a lack of economic means. Now, according to the United Nations, this pandemic endangers the livelihood of a large number of people and can add almost 300 million people to the hunger population of the world. And if we let human beings die of starvation in the 21st century, then I'm sure you will agree that this is shameful. The need to end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture will have to be high on the world community's agenda. Now coming to health. COVID-19 has exposed the hollowness of our public health system across the world, not just in India. It was shocking to see how wealthy Western nations with well-funded public healthcare systems are struggling to cope with the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has made it very clear that public healthcare facilities and the apparatus that support it need to be overhauled, and we need to look at it with a very fresh perspective. The crisis is telling us yet again to invest in prevention and healthcare promotion, as well as in the wider health workforce, tackling avoidable health inequalities and boosting health literacy. Healthcare can no longer be an afterthought because access to quality healthcare for all is non-negotiable, and it has to be the centerpiece of our economic policy making and our economic agenda. Let me say that the Ayushman Bharat initiative in India is so timely in this context, as is the National Digital Health Mission. And we must embark on a universal healthcare program that is all-inclusive and accessible and affordable to every part of our citizenry. Let's then move on to education. Ensuring access to quality education is every citizen's right. And we need to make sure that we focus on inclusive and equitable quality education. And we know that the pandemic has caused havoc in the education field. Schools and colleges have been shut down. Educational institutes have had to deploy online tools, and not everybody can access education online. And this has actually exposed and raised to the surface the huge digital divide that we have in our country for students to access e-learning and online education. And therefore, this has also thrown up another new opportunity for India, which is democratizing education through technology. And that is something that we must focus on as an opportunity where our, large number of children in our country and 1.2 billion children worldwide in 186 countries can actually access education in a way that was never thought of before. Now I want to move on to gender equality or inequality, as whatever you want to call it. The COVID-19 crisis has shown how achieving gender equality and empowering women and girls can actually reap huge dividends. Look at the political leadership exhibited by women political leaders. In every country that had a woman leader, the handling of the pandemic has been far better than those that have been steered by strong men and male leaders. We can see that the infection rates were lower, the death rates were lower, we had flattening of curves, and they knew when to introduce lockdowns and when to lift the lockdowns and how to calibrate the lifting of lockdowns. Foremost amongst these countries are, of course, New Zealand, Taiwan, Finland, Germany, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, and such countries. Even in our own country, I think, health secretaries and health leaders in states which have been entrusted to women have actually done very well. Now, if you look at this common thread of women leaders, they have also gone beyond COVID. They have also focused in a very empathetic way on environmental sustainability, education, gender inclusiveness, and things like that. And I think this is where you need to focus on the importance of reducing the inequality that we painfully see the world over, and it must then translate into gender equality. We have also seen this year, for instance, that the kid of the year was a young girl and of Indian origin, and it shows today that there is gender parity when it comes to education, but we must create parity when it comes to economic opportunities, which are still not there for women in most parts of the world. Now let's come to other aspects of how do we go about SDGs. Can we create sustainable cities and communities? I think this is something which is extremely important. The residents of Dharavi, Asia's largest and most densely populated urban slum, were initially powerless to cope with the virus. Issues of sanitation, ill health, and poverty made them particularly vulnerable. Yet Dharavi was able to successfully contain COVID-19 with its innovative public health policy response. The municipal administration called this model as chasing the virus rather than waiting for people to report it. The WHO has acknowledged Dharavi's success in controlling the virus spread and mentioned that Dharavi should be seen as an example across the world, and they have actually called it the Dharavi model of testing, tracing, isolating, and treating for breaking the chain of transmission. And this was a community effort. And unless we work as a community and work in a sustainable way, we cannot really realize the true benefits of the Sustainable Development Goals. So, the same holds good for climate change. Runaway global warming needs to be addressed urgently, as rising global temperatures is linked to an increased likelihood of pandemics. Extreme weather events, droughts, flooding, and widespread destabilization of global food, economic, and security systems. Unchecked global warming will undo the gains that we have so far seen to address almost every sustainable development goal. It will undo economic recovery. The statistics are damning. 9 out of 10 people do not have access to clean drinking water and safe air globally. Nearly 7 million people every year die due to air pollution globally. India is doing badly on the pollution front. 9 Indian cities are on the list of the 10 most polluted cities in the world, and rising levels of air pollution contributed to over 1.6 million deaths in India in 2019. Decreased economic activity due to lockdowns in most parts of the world led to far-reaching effects earlier this year. In fact, pollution and greenhouse gas emissions fell across continents as countries tried to contain the spread of the virus with strict lockdowns. It was nature's way of reminding us that if you don't pollute, this is how beautiful nature can be. However, pollution levels have bounced back strongly. And in fact, air pollution is back to where it used to be. We have seen Delhi slip back into its highly polluted status when it comes to air pollution. People have not learnt not to burn the stubble, and this actually has been a very, very serious, and disappointing outcome of the pandemic. People have actually tasted the benefits of clean air for many, many months now. You would have thought that people would have learnt by now not to indulge in air pollution. Mankind has all these years been chasing greed, chasing money, political power, and chasing affluence as if there was no tomorrow. The advent of COVID-19 has reminded us that we have been chasing after all the wrong things. This pandemic has some clear and important messages for all of us. Do not be greedy. Do not abuse the environment. Do not try to justify everything in the name of human progress and economic growth. At a time when humanity is facing one of the biggest threats to its existence, we need to step back from the precipice and learn to recognize our common bonds. The pandemic provides a significant opportunity to increase our awareness about diversity and to expand our capacity for empathy and compassion towards members of the global community. To reimagine the future, we will have to ensure the greatest levels of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We will have to find ways to bring together a diverse range of people, giving them equal footing and intentionally include their voices. We need to realize humankind will have to come together in this fight for survival. We need to realize that survival is about partnerships, about collaborations, and about collective action. If we take the right steps, we have a powerfully positive impact on a future which includes more diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I would like to reach out to the Rotary to engage on all these fronts because I know how committed and how impactful Rotary can be on these very aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is a world that must recognize the perils of excluding marginalized people from economic development or the benefits of economic development. This is a world which must realize that surging stock markets don't solve hunger and poverty. And this is a world that must focus on universal quality healthcare for all, good quality education for all, and we must at all costs save and protect our environment. Thank you so much.